So much, Paul. I'm so honored to be a part of the ILTA Edtech 2018 conference. I really wish I could be there live in person in Ireland, although I had promises of getting in trouble last night. So maybe it's better that I'm coming in to present from the States. I'll share a little bit about myself and then just jump right into the presentation, which will cover information about the organization for which I work for, the Online Learning Consortium, which I think has a lot of similarities to ILTA and to, I believe there's folks in the room from Ascolite and other organizations throughout the world, really. So we're all have similar missions and goals, and I think by collaborating and working together, we can make a difference worldwide in the field of online and digital learning. So a little bit about me. I think, as Paul mentioned, I'm Jill Buban, Senior Director of Research and Innovation for OLC. And in this role, being here with you today really exemplifies why my role is so awesome, because I get to work with so many people around the world with the goal of disseminating research in the field of distance and digital learning. I also work with our conference steering committees. We have quite a few conferences throughout the year. I oversee our publications, including our 20-year-old peer-reviewed journal, Online Learning, as well as collaborate with external partners and provide thought leadership for the organization. Another really exciting project that I get to work on and kind of invented a couple of years ago is our Emerging Scholars Program. Over the course of a few months last year, we had a selection process. We put out a call for emerging scholars or doctoral students in the field that were interested in working in the research center and possibly other areas of OLC. So it was a very competitive process. We selected 4, and I believe one, Elaine Byrne from Dublin City University, is in the audience. So a little shout out to Elaine. We're really happy to have her working with the Research Center. Prior to joining OLC, I have various faculty and administrator positions, one at SUNY Empire State College, and another at Post University, where I was most recently Assistant Provost for Research and Innovation. And another quick shout out, I think in the audience, is Meg Benke. It was at SUNY ESC that I learned about OLC, having worked for Meg. She was the former OLC board president and a great mentor and friend. So a big shout out to Meg and all the other folks in the room that I might know or have a history with OLC. So with that, I'm going to switch over to the presentation part and hopefully know how to use this technology a little better. And then I'll come back in on video for questions and answers. And well, you guys aren't on. I mean, please, typically if I was in the room, I'd ask to take questions throughout the presentation. And then a lot of times I never get to the end, but please do take notes and ask questions and we can get back to them at the end of the session. Okay, excellent. So I can still see all of you, and I'm going to go over here. So as I mentioned, working for OLC, a real quick background for those of you that don't know us. In the US, we're really the leading organization to excel online learning, and you might hear me throughout the presentation interchange online learning with the form digital learning. In the States, we're really seeing a real shift in talking about simply online or distance or blended education and encompassing all of those under the framework of digital learning. And I think that also we're looking at digital learning not only in the online environment, but how students are using online modalities, platforms, and digital tools in traditional courses and how we can help with that as well. So we're really kind of shifting the thought frameworks around how students are accessing their courses and what types of students are in these different environments and kind of shifting that thought to digital learning. We offer professional development, instruction, best practices in the field, and we provide opportunities to network. I think that's really one of the best things. I'm sure you all are having a lot of fun networking and meeting new people at ILTA over today, the course of today and tomorrow. And that's exactly what some of our conferences and different things do for folks in the US. So if you have more questions on that, I'd actually shift you to Meg Benke, who is in the room and the expert on this. But really the foundation of OLC, we were founded on the 5 pillars of quality: learning, faculty, students, scale, and access. We have been around since 1999. Originally, we were the Sloan Consortium, and were shifted into a not-for-profit after receiving funding from a program called Anytime, Anyplace. Anytime, Anyplace Learning. If you have a notebook and you're interested in kind of learning about the evolution of online learning in the US, there's a great website, and I can forward it with these slides later, but the Anytime, Anyplace program, there's a website that really details through video, timeline, and white papers the history of online learning in the US that came really through these grants that the Sloan Consortium was giving. In 2014, we did change our name from Sloan to OLC to align with our mission to provide access to high quality digital education. So we've really, since 1999, we've continued to focus on these 5 pillars. So that first one, learning effectiveness, concerned with ensuring that students online are provided with this high quality education. And at one point, we would always say that it was equivalent to traditional face-to-face education. But I think here in the States, we're really trying to get away from that and knowing that the online and digital modalities can really provide the same, if not better. And we have research in that details that now. So while we're still looking at this high quality education, and I'll talk about quality in a couple minutes, we're really trying to get away to saying that we're equivalent to traditional, because we know we're doing a lot of things better than traditional. We also always look at scale so that institutions can offer their best educational value to learners and achieve capacity enrollments. I won't get into this too much, or I won't get anywhere in the presentation to the fun stuff, but a lot of discussions here in the US are also focused around scale, specifically when we're talking about implementing digital tools or digital courseware, and can we bring them from implementation in one course to scaling it to the institution? And will that scalability reduce costs for students? So we're really looking, I don't think I go throughout the day without looking at something that talks about scale. Access, so obviously providing access to all motivated students to complete courses or programs. So adult learners all over the world, if they'd like to take courses, just as you all know, access is such a big part of online education. Faculty satisfaction, meaning that instructors find the online teaching experience rewarding and beneficial. And student satisfaction, obviously that's, I would say as educators, that's one of our biggest goals, the effectiveness of all aspects of the educational experience for the student. Are they satisfied? Are they doing well? And how can we help as an organization, faculty, instructional designers, administrators, how to better that student experience and increase that satisfaction? As I mentioned, we do offer professional development opportunities through our institute. We have workshops, certificate programs, mastery series. We've been in conversations with Paul as well as Alt-C, and I think Marin's in the audience there too, around webinar series in the area of leadership. So always looking at ways to expand those opportunities for professional development. And as I mentioned, I think this is a big interest to this group, and I will kind of just briefly go through and talk about our quality scorecards. But right, that's a big concern, I think, to everyone in the field, really should be everyone in education, is quality. And how can we measure quality? How can we continue to create quality programs in this environment? So many years ago, Dr. Kay Shelton, who is now at Lamar University, created the quality scorecard and normed this quality scorecard, a benchmarking tool for quality in online courses, for her dissertation. And we've been working with Kay for years to refine that, along with others across the country, to really look at how can we measure quality at the program level. So it's a tool and rubric that measures and quantifies strengths and weaknesses in online programs. And we actually offer, you can see the website there, but as I said, I'll send these slides along, hopefully so that you all can get them. We offer a free download of the quality scorecard. There's other way, members have interactive versions. I could talk to you about that as well. But you can definitely download any of them and look at all of the dozens and dozens of benchmarks on the quality scorecard. So this was kind of our hallmark, the program evaluation of quality, all aspects of a program. Most recently, we launched 4 additional versions, and a couple are actually in Spanish. We're also looking at Chinese as well. So just quickly, we have one that's the administration of online programs. This was launched in 2011, and it measures effectiveness of the online learning program, handbook, rubrics, interactive dashboards. So there's a lot there. So this, how do we administer an online program? Again, focused on the quality. We also saw the need for blended learning programs. I don't know, I can see you all. Can I see how many of you are offering blended programs or hybrid programs at your institutions? Yeah, okay, I see lots of hands raised. I almost see it's like the pendulum is shifting from fully online, fully face-to-face, and you know, we went fully online and we're kind of sinking back into the middle of blended and seeing that these hybrid options really work for our students. So looking at that and knowing that blended are different than online and they have face-to-face elements, we created this blended learning quality scorecard to be able to evaluate and benchmark in this modality. We also have the quality course teaching and instructional practice scorecard. And again, these are all breakouts through within the program level scorecard. And this tends to focus on faculty engagement, student engagement, and learning foundations in a course. And you guys can probably see these are all hyperlinked. So that's why I'm excited to get you this slideshow. One that we just expanded is called the Oscar Course Design Review. And this was an exciting project specifically for me because we were able to partner with the State University of New York system. And Meg can correct me on this, but I believe the system has 64 institutions. And so their Open SUNY unit created this course level rubric, and we're using it within the SUNY system. So OSCAR stands for Open SUNY Course Quality Rubric. As I mentioned, Open SUNY is kind of at the top level of SUNY, so at the administration, and works with all of these 64 2-year or community colleges and 4-year colleges, and doctoral degree granting institutions. So they create professional development and opportunities and course development opportunities, and within that they created this OSCAR rubric, and we were able to work with them to bring it over to OLC and offer it worldwide as an open resource so that you can begin to evaluate the quality of the online course design and start to integrate best practices. And I'll just mention, this is a great example of how we hope to partner with different types of institutions. I'll mention that again when I talk about our research. So anyone out there, if you're working on a project, whether it's something as big as a rubric that we may be able to work on together and adopt, or if it's a research project, we're always looking for ways to expand into the community and work with different institutions and different folks in the field. The last scorecard, I know this is a lot to take in, is our digital courseware instructional practice scorecard. So here, are you all using the term, can I see a show of hands if you're using the term digital courseware where you are? I had a feeling that wasn't as well adopted. I think we've seen a big shift in the past few years. And quite honestly, through the Bill and Melinda Gates Post-Secondary Success Grant Program, there's a subset of grants that focus on the implementation of really educational technology in trying to serve first-generation low-income students and increase their success. And this term kind of digital courseware has really surfaced out of all these grant recipients, I think. That's what I've been watching. And so digital courseware for me is really, it's Edtech. It's any Edtech that kind of increases, the hope is will increase success for students in the classroom. So we could be talking adaptive learning solutions, personalized learning solutions, sometimes OER, so all types of technologies to increase student success in courses. So that really speaks to our suite of quality scorecards. And now I'm going to get into kind of what I think is the fun stuff. We have a lot of additional resources at OLC, and these are in my wheelhouse. So not my wheelhouse, my wheelhouse. And these are tools that are open, just as the scorecards are, but you guys can go on our site, you can contribute. These are ways that we really try to reach the community. The first one listed, which has a kind of tricky visual, is our online learning journal. OLJ was formerly the Journal of Asynchronous Learning Networks and is a peer-reviewed journal that has been in existence. We're in our 21st year of publication, so around quite some time. And I think there's someone else in the audience that I'll say hello to. Mark Brown from Dublin City University is on our editorial board for the journal and a great contributor and thought leader to help us have a world perspective, really a global view when we're working on the journal. So OLJ is issued quarterly. Love to have people get involved in terms of being reviewers and obviously authors, so please check that out. Another way I see it's a great resource is that we have a database of articles going back for those 21 years. So you can really find a lot of seminal research in the field. Really, I think almost any topic in online learning you can find a peer-reviewed article in that journal. So would love to have you take a look at that and of course contribute if you'd like to. OLC Insights, we have our blog, would love to see contributors there. And then we also have a collection of podcasts. Podcasts have really expanded in interest here in the States, and we have a few that we've partnered with. One is from the University of Central Florida, and that's called Topcast. Another is from one of a large media outlet in the US called EdSurge. And then we have another that focuses specifically on research, and that's called Research in Action. Some is just basic research principles, and others are research in the field. So those are all great resources that we provide for anyone that happens to be on our site. So please use those. And now kind of shifting over to the other part of the presentation. So I really wanted to give you a little taste of what another consortium like ILTA or ALTC or Askellite is doing and provide you those resources, and then also give you a flavor of kind of the research that we're seeing in the States that's focused on digital learning. So I came on board at OLC just about 3 years ago to start this research center, and OLC had long before in its days as the Sloan Consortium had always been a leader in the area of research and online learning and had small research think tanks or symposiums and published papers on what was happening in the field. And we really wanted to get back to those roots and obviously expand, but become the kind of one-stop shop for research in the field. I don't know about all of you, but at least on my Twitter feed, I could read research in the field all day, and then I forget where it is if I don't download it. So our goal is really to kind of bring all of that together eventually, as well as create new research in the field. So as you can see, we have, research studies, white papers, journal articles, and that's actually something I mentioned. The emerging scholars are working on quite a bit, and Elaine is working on a white paper now for the center. So very exciting. And we just added the option for you to be able to submit. So if any of you are working on something, it's another option from the peer-reviewed journal. If you'd like to submit case study, white paper, a research findings from a research study, there's a submit area, or you can contact me. But again, that's our goal, to disseminate as much meaningful research in the field. So in building up this research center, we kind of, I had this beautiful blank slate and thought about how we could categorize what's happening in our field and what has been happening over the past 25 years now. So we started with 6 categories. And those include annual reports, teaching and learning, instructional design and learning design, leadership, digital learning, and coming very soon, a whole focus on quality. So I'm going to give you a kind of a brief preview of some of the things that we've been working on and research that you might find useful. For the past 14 years, we've been working with the Babson Research Group. These reports are often cited in the US for their definitions around distance, online, and blended learning. They've really become a mainstay or anchor for folks in the field, actually really in higher education in the US, to be looking for trends in online learning, definitions, and also kind of forecasting where we're going in the field. But I mentioned that they're often cited for definitions both in government levels, both federally and for state levels in the US. So they've really become this kind of anchor, and people kind of wait for them to come out every year. So I'm thinking once you see the cover, some of you may have read these in the past. So as I mentioned, it's in the 14th year of publication, and we use data from the U.S. Department of Education's National Center for Education Statistics Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System. It's a mouthful, which is also known as IPEDS. One caveat that I just will put out there, and I think is really interesting to think about, the first time IPEDS included distance ed enrollments was 2012. So really only 5 years ago in terms of the report. So it's kind of like we've come a long way, baby, but not so much so in terms of education and being recognized at that level. So another caveat with IPEDS is that they only count first-time students. There's some work being done in recognizing that adult learners and typically online learners transfer and have many sources of credit. So hopefully, we can do something with some of these definitions and categories within IPEDS, but being that it's based on that's the data we have, but that it's only first-time learners, I think it skews the picture a little bit for online. So just a couple of findings from this year's report that I think might be interesting to you all in comparison to what's happening with distance ed in your country or in your local region. Distance enrollments were composed of almost 15% of students taking exclusive distance courses. So distance encompasses online and blended. And then just under 17% were taking a combination of distance and non-distance. So you can see I put up there the enrollments and the percentages compared to 2015. So both went up, all courses at a distance dropped a little, but some courses at a distance increased. You can also see here, and I don't want to read the slides to you because I do want to get through everything for today, but some more interesting data that came out of that distance ed students grew by 5.6%, and those taking at least one distance course were almost 32% of all students. Nearly 50% of distance ed students are concentrated in 5% of institutions. So if you download the report, one of the appendices it lists all of these institutions. So 50% are at 5%. It's pretty interesting. And when you're living in the States, you can kind of guess who those 5 are because you see their marketing all the time on TV. And then you can see the top 47 enroll 22.4 of all distance. So it's just interesting that there's still that concentration of top institutions offering the distance learning, and the students are selecting those schools. And you can see 52.8 took at least one distance course, also took an on-campus course. And then what's really interesting, 56% reside in the same state as the institution at which they enrolled. So I think, years ago, we were going across state borders for education, and there weren't as many players in the game. There weren't as many institutions in the field of distance learning and online learning. So we saw those across state borders. A report that came out last year in the States noted that most students, the majority of students, take classes within 50 miles of their home. So we're seeing that, I also think that has to do why they're taking on campus courses. They can do those blended modalities. If they need to get a class in, they could take a blended class, or they can take it all online. But it'll be interesting to watch that in terms of where we are, to see if they continue to rise and maintain, continue to take classes close to their homes. Another annual report that we actually just started working on is this 2017 Inside Higher Ed survey of faculty attitudes on technology. Inside Higher Ed, I'm sure some of you read that. Are you all, can I see a show of hands? Are you all familiar with that? So a lot of people, yes. So that's I'd say our largest media outlet. It's in my inbox at 4 a.m. every morning to see what's happening in the world of higher education. So we partnered up with the folks, the editors at Inside Higher Ed, and worked on the survey and created questions and normed it. And if you saw me, I'm really excited because it was a fun project to do. And if you're kind of a little bit of a research geek like me, it was fun to work on a national survey with this media company. So again, just a few things to point out. These are really faculty perceptions on teaching online, course design, professional development, and working with instructional designers. So, 9 and 10 were involved in the course design. We're seeing, I think we probably knew that all along. A lot of us have in some way worked on courses if we're faculty, but we're also seeing this increase since 2013, 30% to 42% have taught an online class. So we're just seeing this increase in, really online teaching and learning, as both of these surveys are showing. A couple of more interesting things, as I mentioned before, this idea of digital courseware, implementing really the Edtech teaching and learning tools in the courses. So a third say that they've tried to use that. And if you continue to read that first call out, what's interesting and something that OLC is trying to work on, but also a lot of folks here in the States, who's choosing these tools? How are they being implemented? If they're in your course, how are you measuring their efficacy? So this is really a hot topic for us, this digital courseware and the integration of it. We also tried to look at some different areas in this report that we think are hot buttons or hot topics for faculty. So we did look at textbooks, 9 in 10 faculty members say textbooks are priced too high. I don't think anyone's a shock there. I think there's some folks in the audience from the OER conference. So here in the States, we're also looking at how we're implementing OER, and we know that the textbooks are too high. So what can we do about that? And then plagiarism, it's always a topic here for us as well. So this really looked at, do undergraduate students know what plagiarism is? And if so, are you using some type of plagiarism detection platform in your courses? Do those work? That's a very big industry for us here. Another area that I mentioned, the second area, is around teaching and learning. And obviously this category focuses on faculty and pedagogical practices for digital learning. There's a lot of resources in each of these, but I just called out a couple to give you a taste of what we're doing. These both exemplify ways in which we worked with institutions in the United States to produce original research. The first is a research study about virtual training for faculty in the online modality. So looking at, have they had training? What kind of training have they had? How has that training been provided? And we partnered with the University of Virginia on that. There's some really good nuggets of information in that study if faculty training's of interest to you. The second there, the digital academic revolution, we looked at, we worked with California Polytechnical University, and Cal Poly as we call it here, looking at mentoring relationships in online and how those can increase success in the online modality. So like I said, these both exemplify how we've worked with a couple of different institutions, and I would love to hear from you if you're working on something or think there's a way, there's a topic we could work on. Some current projects we have going on right now and we'll be publishing by the end of the year is a study on augmented and virtual reality with a group from the state of Michigan. Another is looking at different digital learning conference themes over the past 10 years and trying to see what trends there have been in online learning. We're doing something on leadership, and that is we're doing a couple projects on online learning leadership, one with our program, one on innovation in the field of leadership and digital learning, and then a couple other smaller ones. And I'd just say, I mentioned our journal before as well. That's another area which I'm always looking for input. If you think there's a hot topic for a special section of one of our journals, I'd love to talk to you about that and seeing ways we could possibly collaborate. So one of our other topic areas, instructional design. These are really such hot topics. I could talk about them forever, but I am watching the time, Paul. On this specific study that I'm calling out, we partnered with another group, Intentional Futures. They're a research and design firm in the US, and that's something we can work with other folks to get some of their expertise, and then we can provide the research backbone. But anyway, we worked with them to disseminate research on kind of the state of instructional design in the US. We also had a 3-part webinar series, and that's available. You can replay it on our website. Another study that we did was research preparation and engagement, and that was actually, we disseminated that for Oregon State University. So that's pretty interesting, really looking at what the preparation instructional designers have in the US higher education system. But real quickly, you guys can read these, but this instructional design in higher ed in the US really looked, some of the interesting pieces of information that we gleaned from this report is looking at how many instructional designers are in the US, what their educational background is, what kind of experience they are. And then we found that a lot had experience in technology development as well. So that just kind of surfaced in the study. But one of the things we really looked at was this training of instructional designers. And we looked at that because we thought there could really be in the next few years a shift in how faculty and instructional designers work together, as more and more instructional designers have more and more education in their background, and how that kind of shifts the relationship of the faculty member with the doctoral degree working with the instructional designer, and how they may become more equal. Not that they weren't before, but in terms of the faculty viewpoint of working with them, and how it's more of the faculty member as the pedagogy and the instructional designer as the design skills, and it's two experts coming together to create the course. So we're still looking at that, and we'll continue to do so. Again, some more interesting nuggets. What we really looked at too was their day-to-day role and what they do, and thinking that instructional or learning designers really are creating those courses, where we did find they're still doing some project management. They're still thought of as, you know, the help desk person that someone can call. So again, something we want to continue to watch as the field evolves. Another category in our 6 categories is leadership, and this is leadership specific to digital learning. So here, again, here in the States, we have, and Paul actually came over here for one of our programs that we offer, but we see a real expansion in this area of digital learning leadership. So these leadership roles specific to online learning at institutions. And OLC has been in this area we're going into our 10th year with a professional development workshop called the Institution for Emerging Leadership and Online Learning. Mark Brown has been faculty for that. Meg Benke has. Paul came over and was involved in that. So that's looking at the emerging leader in online learning. And then we've also developed a leadership network for this senior online leader. And we have some courses there. So it's not only OLC, but we're just seeing this role really burst at the seams in U.S. higher education. And something that we're tracking is how this role might differ from another one that's been talked about, the Chief Innovation Officer at the institution. So we're seeing this Associate Provost or Provost for Digital Learning, as well as this Chief Information Officer role. So on the screen, I know you've all been looking while I'm talking a bit. Actually, our board president is Eric Fredrickson. He's also faculty member and Associate Provost or Associate Vice President at a university here in the States, University of Rochester. And he just conducted a national study of online learning leaders in the U.S. and is really, again, to get that idea of who are these people and what, you know, what keeps them up at night. So this list here reflects the top priorities or issues of the 255 leaders that responded to the survey. So faculty development and training, obviously the top, strategic planning, staffing, funding, providing student support. And this study was published in our journal, so you can find it there. A lot of interesting information there. Another leadership study that we conducted and actually just released last month looked at innovation in higher education. I just mentioned this role of a Chief Innovation Officer. I'm sure it's the same wherever you are in the world. Innovation is this buzzword now, and we're trying to get we're trying to understand and articulate what it actually means in higher ed, because I know at least I read the word probably half a dozen times a day, and the context varies. So with this report, we really wanted to look at what chief academic officers think about innovation, what's happening on their campuses, and just get a real baseline of what's happening in terms of innovation in higher ed. We started with this basic definition. Innovation is the implementation of new initiatives in order to drive growth, increase revenue, reduce costs, differentiate experience, or adjust the value proposition. We surveyed more than 100 of these senior leaders in the field, and then we did some qualitative interviews as well. And the report is up on our site. I'm going to quickly go through these as I watch our time here. So this was an interesting result here, which best describes your institution's approach to innovation. And you can see whether it's unplanned, decentralized, planned, decentralized. The majority was the unplanned, centralized approach. And again, the report would give you more context to this. Looking at whether innovation is a top priority in the strategic plan, we found that most said it was prioritized in the strategic plan, but most also said there was no funding provided for innovation at their institutions. So definitely a disconnect there. And then again, the text is a little small in this, but you can download this from our site. Some interesting responses in terms of where innovation, the area in which the focus is on campus. And you can see for us, I don't think it's a surprise within non-traditional approaches and teaching and pedagogy. The colors are a little off for you, but the majority of folks ranked those number one. So they were able to rank 1 through 3. And within non-traditional and teaching and pedagogy were the top there. And the folks that I worked with on this, we kind of looked at those lower numbers there as well. I just don't think we tend to think of units like advancement or student life or the registrar as being innovative, but we do think there's opportunity there. These are just a few other resources I wanted to call out, and they are available through the Research Center. Chloe is again another survey that was done by 2 organizations, Quality Matters and EduVentures, and that focuses on this digital learning leader. And then another organization, Entangled Solutions, have 2 reports on innovation and really looking at this chief innovation officer and also how to foster innovation, different models for fostering innovation on the campus. Real quickly, just going through the last area that we'll talk about, digital learning, is a big focus of the Research Center, obviously, as we've talked about. And here's a few reports that are featured. Last year, we did a study on alternative credentials and how they might be being used at different institutions in the US. And so by alternative credentials, I mean MOOCs, boot camps, prior learning, any type really of prior learning that students might be bringing in that are under these new forms of credentialing. So there's some real interesting information in that. And you can see just by the ones I put up here, credentialing is a real big topic here in the US. And we're trying to get our hands around how those credentials might be used for academic credit. This last, the one with the green cover here, Making Digital Learning Work, that was just published last month. And we're disseminating that for Arizona State University. They did a large 6-institutional study on the returns of digital learning. So the return on investment for digital learning at institutions. And we'll be doing an upcoming webinar series looking at some of those institutional findings. I just wanted to call out, we did have a special edition on learning analytics. So under this digital learning umbrella, we have that there. There's a great literature review on learning analytics that might be of interest to those of you interested in this area. And then is anyone in the audience looking at K-12 online digital learning? So, no. So here in the States, a lot of primary school research being done online. And these are just some great resources that I always go to better understand that environment of the elementary or primary student and high school student that are taking online learning. We're seeing more and more of that here in the US. And I think from the OLC perspective, we're looking at how higher education institutions might be looking at awarding credit for those courses, transitioning students from the high school level into the post-secondary education environment. And this is the end, I promise, Paul. we're seeing a call for efficacy research here in the States, and how are we able to measure these digital coursewares that we're using, the educational technology that we're using? How can we get fast, effective research on what's happening with these courseware in the classes? Are they effective? Are they not? As you all know, if we're doing evidence-based research and then publishing in the journal, it can take really a couple years to get results, and we want to understand these technologies better. So just a few toolkits. I saw Paul get up, so I'm going to go through these, and like I said, I'll send these out. A research center that's really well known in the States is called the Distance Ed and Technological Advancement Research Center out of the University of Milwaukee. Tanya Justin leads this center. She's one of our lead researchers in the US in online learning. There's a great toolkit there that you can download for free. And I'd suggest you guys take a look at that. We also have something called the Courseware in Context, and this is on our website as well. And you can see there's different product taxonomies, so Edtech products. There's a great searchable research collection on Edtech digital courseware, and then there's both course level and institutional level implementation guides. And then the last one I'll talk about, and I won't go through everything with you, but we're working on a project with another research company on something called Petal. It's the practical evaluation of digital learning, and it allows faculty, instructional designers, anyone who has their hands on a class and maybe doesn't know a lot about research, it provides them that knowledge to implement research strategies, to do those efficacy-based trial runs, and see what type of evidence you need to make decisions around Edtech. And like I said, I'll get these slides to you, but these are some of the things we've been looking at in order to get this practical evaluation of digital learning toolkit out. These are all the folks we've looked at who could use this tool. And then I'm just going to leave this up here for 1 minute because you can all use it if you want to write that down or take a picture of it. And if you do use it, I'd love for you to give me feedback on it, because we will be disseminating it as an open resource later this year. But if you have instructional designers on campus and they have never gone through different research protocols, it teaches you how to do that. If you want to, you can skip those steps and do other steps. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that type of tool as well. And that was my real quick run through of what OLC is and what's happening in research in the US. So I'm happy to take questions now. And of course, would love to chat with any of you if you contact me and want to have a conversation.